One, two, one, two. One, two, one, two. You saying it all right?
Good afternoon once again. And please just let me apologize once more for the delay. As I said, we were having some connectivity issues as we are streaming live. The Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, First Secretary, the Permanent Mission of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations, Asha Challenger, Mr. Peter Bolt, UNICEF Representative for the Eastern Caribbean, Elizabeth Talbert, Director and Representative for the United Nations Population Fund in the Caribbean, Anna Paulini, Director of the UNESCO Office for the Caribbean, Limia El Tayeb, Resident Representative for United Nations Development Program in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, Dr. Martin Baptiste, Chief of the Social Sector Division at the Caribbean Development Bank, Ashley Lashley, Executive Director of the Ashley Lashley Foundation, United Nations colleagues, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, children and young people, good afternoon. My name is Kareem Smith. I am the Communications Associate at the UNICEF Office for the Eastern Caribbean. And today, I'm really happy to welcome you to UN House in Barbados. I want to extend a very special welcome to those streaming again on our YouTube page. For us at UNICEF, and I'm sure for our partners as well, today is a very special day. It's the official launch of the Small Island Developing States Global Children and Youth Action Summit. As many of you know, the international community will gather in Antigua and Barbuda from the 27th to 30th of May this year to examine the progress of SIDS and in the area of sustainable development in an effort to bolster our collective paths to prosperity. At UNICEF, we believe that our children and young people have the right to have a say in these matters and that their views ought to be prioritized. And with that in mind, we have partnered with the Ashley Lashley Foundation, the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and a host of other entities to bring young people from the Caribbean, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea together in Antigua and Barbuda for this summit. At this time, I want to welcome our UNICEF representative, Mr. Peter Bolt, to deliver his opening remarks.
Good afternoon. Let me not repeat the long list of partners with which we are working here and adopt the protocol that Karim and my colleague Karim just outlined. Really happy to be here with all of you this afternoon and happy to see so many of you also online, live following this event on YouTube. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the official media launch of the Small Island Developing States Global Children and Youth Action Summit, which will take place in Antigua and Barbuda from 24 to 26 of May, just before the main SIDS 4 conference starts. As UNICEF, we are honored and delighted to be working in such close collaboration with the government of Antigua and Barbuda, the Ashley Lashley Foundation, on this momentous project which carries the theme Small Islands, Big Dreams, Youth for SIDS Resilience. We are truly breaking new ground here, as this summit will be the first of its kind, a landmark opportunity to bring young people together from across the 3 SIDS regions, to unify their voice, allowing it to resonate on a global platform. And hearing that voice and acting on what we hear has become critical to the future of our children and young people, a future which many feel is increasingly precarious. We are all acutely aware of the specific challenges facing the 57 small island developing states in all their beauty and complexity. SIDS tend to have narrow resource bases and economies that are not sufficiently diversified, with a significantly lower capacity to absorb economic and environmental shocks. They are often ridden with debt, and 40% of them are now facing unsustainable debt levels. On top of that, SIDS are hugely vulnerable to climate change and its impacts, from instantly catastrophic natural disasters to the slow, creeping devastation that emerges from the loss of habitat, increasing heat and rainfall, and rising sea levels. In addition, the SIDS are not on track to attain the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. According to the 2023 Sustainable Development Report of SIDS, they face a far greater gaps to SDG achievements than the rest of the world. Confronted with this somewhat bleak prognosis, our children and young people are not losing hope. Far from it. They are thinking and organizing, becoming increasingly powerful change agents, shaping a brighter and more equitable and prosperous future. Small Islands, Big Dreams, Youth for SIDS Resilience. This is a rallying cry of optimism, of hope and determination. It recognizes the vital role that children and young people play in responding to the threats and dangers and in building resilience of their families, their communities, and their nations. During the summit in Antigua and Barbuda, they will have wide-ranging intergenerational conversations on issues that matter to them most: climate action, education, sustainable development, livelihoods, and how they can achieve their rights as encompassed in the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Let's not forget that a child's right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment has now been officially recognized by the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child under their rights, specific mentionly under General Comment number 26. Perhaps most significantly, children and youth will forge a call to action to be presented on the first day of the official Global UN SIDS conference, where they will have the ear of our leaders, our governments, and the wider world community. Their call to action will include programs and projects that young people would like to see implemented and financed during the SIDS agenda for the next 10 years. UNICEF will be there throughout the process, facilitating and supporting children and youth before, during, and after the summit. We just completed a global desk review analyzing the voices of children and youth from across SIDS. We have been and will continue to support regional and worldwide SIDS children and youth consultations, both face-to-face and online, using our global U-Report platform, which has almost 400,000 young members from across SIDS. We have started and will continue to advocate for their voices with the negotiators of the official SIDS 4 outcome documents. And we will continue to empower children and youth in advocacy and influencing skills to ensure that their voices are heard. And we will not stop there. UNICEF would like to see children and youth engagement reflected in the design of the Global Center of Excellence for SIDS and in all relevant policies and programs that it aims to implement. Thankfully, we're not alone in this endeavor. And as well as working closely with the government of Antigua and Barbuda and the Ashley Lashley Foundation, we, as in UNICEF Global, are also collaborating with numerous other youth groups, advocates, and platforms, with other UN agencies such as UNESCO, UNFPA, UNEP, UN Women, and last but not least, we're very thankful for the support from the Caribbean Development Bank and a number of other bilateral and private sector partners. The SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit really matters. We hope you hear the aspirations of children and young people from small island developing states, which, with 65 million people, represent less than 1% of the world's population, but carry a disproportionate burden of the world's challenges. They may be small islands, but they have big ideas and big dreams that will lead the way for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boat. And here to tell you a bit more about this summit is the Executive Director of the Ashley Lashley Foundation, Ashley Lashley, who also happens to be one of our UNICEF youth advocates here in the Eastern Caribbean. Welcome, Ashley.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Protocols having been established. And I wrote a little script, but I can change it up a little bit, Kareem, if it's okay with you. So I remember this morning, I was doing an interview on one of the radio stations for Antigua and Barbuda, and they asked the first question, how was the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit formed? And I remember being a climate activist and environmental activist and traveling internationally to represent my country, Barbados. I often found that there were limited young people from across small island developing states in the room. And for me, that was kind of disappointing, knowing the amount of challenges we from small island developing states are facing. So I remember I was like, why not host a forum that brings together children and youth from across the varying small island developing states? And I spoke to UNICEF at the time. I don't know if it was Peter that I brought the first idea to. And Peter was on board. Yes, Ashley, we can get it done. And then we were told that the SIDS 4 conference was upcoming. And I approached the government of Antigua, Ambassador Webster from the Permanent Mission, and I told him that the SIDS 4 conference really need to ensure that the voices of children and youth from across small island developing states are meaningfully engaged in this process. Too often times discussions are held in rooms and we as young persons are at the forefront of the conversations that are being discussed. And funny enough, he loved the idea. I never saw someone in a place of power having so much willingness and ingenuity to really ensure that youth from across small island developing states are being included in the overall SIDS conference. And that's how the SIDS Global Children and Youth Action Summit have been formed. And since then, the support of so many different partners for this Children and Youth Action Summit has indeed been immense. And I'm excited to see what is going to transpire in Antigua and Barbuda. And then for me, I was like, well, SIDS 4 is developing a 10-year commitment to action document. I'm currently 24. I'll be like 35 in the next 10 years. We as children and youth really have a role to play, especially when our leaders are developing action or solutions that they deem concrete for us as young people if we're not being included into the room. So that's the idea behind the SIDS Global Children and Youth Action Summit, to really give us as young people a voice from across SIDS, especially the next 10-year commitment to action document. So for me, it is indeed an honor and privilege to stand before you, as you've heard, with a profound sense of determination and honor as we launch the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit. But today I would say, as we stand on the cusp of monumental change, it is imperative that we recognize, and all of us recognize, the pivotal role that we as youth and children play in shaping the future of our nations and our planet. The summit holds a profound significance, not only for me as a young person from a small island developing state, but other countless youth from across SIDS and around the globe who share our dreams, our aspirations, and our unwavering commitment to positive transformation. You've heard the theme from Peter: small island, big dreams, youth for SIDS resilience. And it really speaks to our resilience in the face of adversity, our determination to overcome challenges, and our unwavering belief in the power of collective action. And I want you guys to emphasize, and I want you guys to go away remembering the power of collective action. I've had the privilege over the last 2 months of working alongside 9 remarkable young leaders from Barbados, Guyana, Micronesia, Palau, Seychelles, Mauritius, Antigua, and Barbuda to organize the summit, who really formed the steering committee. Their passion, creativity, and dedication continue to inspire me, and together we have crafted a summit program that reflects our shared vision for a brighter future. Our summit will encompass a range of activities and initiatives that are really aimed at driving meaningful change within our communities, from discussions on resilient recovery and environmental integrity to hands-on experiences of the blue and green economy. We will explore innovative solutions to the pressing challenges facing our SIDS. Moreover, we have what is the most exciting component for me that is embedded into the agenda, and that is our Sustainable Cultural Fashion Showcase, which will celebrate the rich diversity of cultures while advocating for sustainable and social justice. But perhaps the most important element of this summit is that it's about action. We will not simply talk, but we will act. Through our 10-year commitment to action document, we will implement youth-led projects across the SIDS regions, paving the way for tangible, lasting change. Additionally, we will establish the first ever SIDS Youth Action Body to monitor our progress and hold our leaders and ourselves accountable. At the summit's conclusion, there will be an Inspire Me chat with a celebrity guest who I can't disclose at the moment, as well as a donor negotiation, Shark Tank kind of style event, which is aimed at securing support for projects in the Caribbean, the ACE region, and the Pacific region. Additionally, we are committed to ensuring the inclusion of youth from varying diverse backgrounds by, as you heard Peter mention, hosting national, regional, and then an interregional consultation with youth from across SIDS. So stay tuned for the launch of our online survey through the YouReport platform, where you as youth and children can gather your insights into shaping our commitment to action document based on these initial consultations. So as we gather here today, I want us to remember the immense responsibility that rests upon our shoulders as young people and children. The decisions made at this summit will not only shape the future of SIDS, but will also shape the future of us across small island developing states. Our ability to achieve sustainable development as outlined in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development hinges upon our collective willingness to listen to the voices of young people and to act upon their insights. I am thrilled to announce that we will be welcoming approximately 60 young delegates from across small island developing states to Antigua and Barbuda from May 24th to 26th. Our call for delegates will soon be released, so I urge you to stay tuned to our social media channels for updates at SIDS Youth Action that can be found on IG or Twitter. And our website is currently live today, which is a big accomplishment on our part. We were working on it for the last couple of weeks at www.sidsyouthsummit.com. So as a 24-year-old, I stand here with a deep understanding of the pivotal role youth play in shaping our present and our future. We are not waiting for tomorrow to lead, we are leading now. It is essential for government, civil society, the private sector, and international organizations to unite with us as we navigate towards a future of resilience and prosperity. I look forward to the age of 35 to see the outcomes of the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit and SIDS 4 and so that they can shape the impact of the lives of our youth towards a brighter, more sustainable future for SIDS and beyond. And thank you to all of the partners who have supported us thus far. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to Ms. Ashley Lashley, Executive Director of the Ashley Lashley Foundation, for speaking to us a bit about this summit. And I feel, even from the audience, an air of excitement when Ashley speaks about this summit. And I think it's testament to the fact that young people have a lot to say about these issues, and they ought to be active participants as opposed to mere bystanders. At this time, we want to hear from some of our partner organizations in this venture. And at this time, I want to invite Ms. Elizabeth Talbert, Director and Representative for the United Nations Population Fund in the Caribbean, to deliver remarks virtually.
I'm delighted to speak to you at this launch for the Small Island Development States Children and Youth Action Summit. On behalf of the United Nations Population Fund, I commend the organization for this crucial initiative. UNFPA wholeheartedly endorses the objectives of this summit, which aims to empower children, adolescents, and youth in the SIDS to address pressing challenges and seize opportunities for a brighter future. We are indeed pleased to support preparatory consultations with adolescents and youth in countries across the SIDS. This summit coincides with the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action. This groundbreaking program prioritized people's aspirations, needs, and rights, especially in sexual and reproductive health and gender equality. Notably, it included a chapter on adolescents' rights, highlighting the importance of UNFPA's work with youth. UNFPA is dedicated to implementing initiatives and allocating resources to ensure that every young person's potential is fulfilled. Our efforts with partners such as the Government of Barbados, the Government of Antigua and Barbuda, which will host the SIDS conference, the Ashley Lashley Foundation, UNICEF, and others, exemplifies the shared values and goals we hold dear: a commitment to the well-being and empowerment of adolescents and youth everywhere. I urge all of you to join us in supporting this summit. Your contribution can make a difference in the lives of countless children, adolescents, and youth worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elizabeth Talbert. Now, in the room, another one of our partners from the Caribbean Development Bank's Division, the Caribbean Development Bank's Division Chief for the Social Sector Division, Dr. Martin Baptiste.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished colleagues gathered here, youth and children across the small island development states and all partners for youth development, greetings. The Caribbean Development Bank is pleased to join partners in supporting the first ever SIDS Global Children and Youth Action Summit to be convened in May on the eve of the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States under the theme Small Islands, Big Dreams, Youth for SIDS Resilience. Friends, our purpose as CDB is to contribute to the harmonious economic growth and development of the member countries in the Caribbean. And none of this is possible if children and young people are unable to contribute to the decision-making on matters that affect the present and also their futures. You know, the aspiration to create a better future for generations to come is reflected in a range of frameworks that we have adopted across the globe, such as the UN Charter, the Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which recognizes the importance of international cooperation in improving the living conditions of children in every country. And of course, at CDB, we have, for example, our youth policy and operational strategy. The recent disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on our children and youth are a stark reminder of the fact that we have a long way to go and that we need to ensure that we engage our children and youth as we make decisions about their lives today and the future tomorrow. So the meeting of minds of our children and young people across the region, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the South China Sea, critically creates a space for sharing of new ideas, solutions, commitments, and recommendations for a course of action. It is a key step, but I think we'll agree that it is not enough. Realizing resilient prosperity to which SIDS aspire is only possible if children and youth have a seat at the table as equal and valued development partners, but importantly as beneficiaries. We stand here today, some of us not 24, and we remember what we were then, and we are delighted that we can offer you the opportunity to craft your tomorrow today as you move beyond aspirations to actuality and give you a space where you can transition your dreams into destiny. And so for us at CDB, we are absolutely delighted in fully supporting the efforts of the SIDS4 committee, and we endorse and celebrate the meaningful inclusion of young people into the discussion, the negotiations, and the outcomes. I can tell you that within CDB, we continue to take action and will do so as part of our core mandate in supporting development in the region. Together, we can continue to reconstruct tomorrow, today. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Baptiste. And of course, this summit would not be possible without the invaluable support of the host country. And with that said, I want to invite the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, to deliver his remarks virtually.
Distinguished youth and children, greetings to all from the beautiful shores of Antigua and Barbuda, where we stand poised to host a landmark event in the journey of small island developing states. I am honored to address you today as we prepare to launch the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit, a pivotal gathering that places the voices of our youth and children at the forefront of our discussions and actions. This summit represents more than just a conference. It is a beacon of hope, a platform for collaboration, and a testament to the power of our young people to effect real change. As we embark on this journey, our expectations are high, but our belief in the potential of our youth is even higher. We expect active engagement, innovative ideas, and bold initiatives from our young leaders. Your voices matter, and they will shape the outcomes of this summit. Together, we will address the unique challenges facing our small island developing states and chart a course towards a more sustainable and resilient future. My dear youth and children, as the host country, Antigua is proud to play a leading role in this important summit. We recognize the significance of this gathering and the responsibility that comes with it. We are committed to providing a supportive environment where every voice is heard, every idea is valued, and every action is celebrated. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thanks to all our partners who have supported us in making this event possible. Your dedication and commitment to the cause of our youth and children are truly commendable, and we are grateful for your unwavering support. To the youth and children across small island developing states, I say this: you are the future of our nations, and your contributions are invaluable. Seize this opportunity to make your voices heard, to stand up for what you believe in, and to work together towards a brighter tomorrow. Together, let us pave the way for a better future for all. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, for those very bold commitments, and again for supporting this summit. At this time, I want to invite you to view a brief video message from children and young people across the small island developing states.
In the vast expanse of our oceans lies the heartbeat of our planet. And here on the shores of small island developing states, a chorus of voices rises to protect these lands. We have to build our island homes for future generations. As small island developing states, we face huge challenges. We need to mitigate natural disasters.
Precisamos agir em relação às mudanças climáticas e à subida do nível do mar.
We need to protect our biodiversity. We need strong, diverse economies.
And good jobs to look forward to.
We need high-quality education.
We need access to clean water.
Vamos agir agora para proteger os nossos fracos ecossistemas, a nossa biodiversidade,
os nossos meios de subsistência,
o nosso futuro,
nosso oceano,
a nossa terra,
our home,
our future,
our responsibility,
our solidarity,
our story,
our voice.
Indeed, our children and young people have a lot to say and a lot to contribute. At this time, I want to invite UNICEF representative, Mr. Peter Bolt, and Ashley Lashley to join me on stage as we take a few questions from the media, both those in the room and those joining us live on Zoom. After which we will also hear from our young people. Are there any questions? Are there any questions from our journalists in the room? No questions? Okay, then I'll open to our virtual participants if there are any questions. Yeah. All right, and if there are no questions from our journalists, we'll open the floor to our most important stakeholders, our children and our young people.
Hello, good morning. First, I would like to commend you on this effort. I think that it was something that would be very effective. My question is, what does this look like for our educational system? Where do you see, in Barbados and across the region, where do you see our educational system mostly pointing to secondary and tertiary education in those 10 years, in 10 years?
Thank you for the question. So within the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit, we have key thematic areas, right, that are focused on resilient recovery, safe and prosperous, environmental integrity, and planetary sustainability. So within those specific components, what we're doing is building the capacity of young people on those respective topics. So within the summit itself, it would form like master classes where the delegates that are coming to the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit would be able to build their capacity to continue to advocate for the necessary inclusion of children and youth on those specific areas. But as we know, education is the key to everything. And embedded, and that is why it is important, in my opinion, that children and youth are included into all spaces relating to the SIDS 4 conference. So not only within the Children and Youth Action Summit, but also the SIDS 4 process itself, whether it be in the negotiating spaces, whether it be having young people placed on government's delegations, but also seeing ways in which we can create more job opportunities as well for youth and children across small island developing states. So the educational component is embedded into our capacity building activities, also our pre-consultations as well, which will formulate different questions in which we would ask to you as children and youth to gather your insights and inputs, which will help shape the overall commitment to action document in which we would see coming out of the summit. So even in the desk review that UNICEF did, we saw that education is a major component. So what we want to do is really to continue to engage with more children and youth to continue to highlight the priorities that we really want to address. So I'm hopeful to see education, because it is the key to everything, being one of the key focus areas in the outcomes of not only the Children and Youth Action Summit, but SIDS 4 itself.
What can I say more? But there's one more important thing. I think we all recognize, I think, and you as young people as well, still in education or just coming out of the education sector, we realize that there's a lot of catch-up we need to do globally in terms of making education relevant for our daily reality. We're running behind as a world, and I'm just not talking about SIDS countries only. We're running behind in terms of quality and access to education, and we have to do a lot of effort to work and catch up on that. Besides everything that Ashley mentioned, I think the voices of young people have already raised very much education as one of the critical areas to focus on. But besides what you mentioned in terms of what the summit is going to look at the actions and going forward, we already need to advocate for education today. And I think it's extremely relevant and important that we collectively, as international organizations, as partners, as children and young people, push for education being one of the core areas of work in the overall SIDS agenda. At the moment, it's going back and forth. The negotiations are happening at the moment on the outcome document. But ultimately, we need to make sure collectively, and not wait until the summit, that that outcome document reflects education as a critical area. And we have to make sure that we don't lose side of that in terms of recommendation, because the outcome document ultimately is going to drive the agenda for the next 10 years and is going to drive the financing for the next 10 years. So everything we do around the summit is key, but our work is already starting today to make sure that we push this agenda and reflect the voices of young people, especially on education, in terms of the negotiations that take place in New York at the moment.
Thank you. Secondly, if I may, this is directed to Ms. Lashley. You would have mentioned in your address SIDS Youth Action Body, as well as a sustainable culture, fashion. Can you finish it for me? Right. What more can you tell me about that, especially the second one? I think that is a wonderful initiative. Our plurality and our culture is what not only is a part of our identity as small island developing states, but also our plurality is what shapes us generally. So I must commend you on that. So what more can you tell me about that? Tell us about that.
Thank you. So the Sustainable Cultural Fashion Show was developed by the Steering Committee for the Children and Youth Action Summit. And we know that climate change and sustainability is a big topic right now that we're discussing. And it's one of the key components of the Children and Youth Action Summit. So we wanted to find a way in which we can tap into the creativity and ingenuity of youth from across SIDS while still having fun at the same time. So that would be like a cultural night that is embedded into the program, where we're asking all delegates that are coming to Antigua to bring a cultural wear, something that represents their country. But we're also asking them to put a sustainable twist to it, whatever is within their community. But I mean, whatever is in their overall advocacy or country. But then there's another component to that overall summit, too. We know that there's so many different partners that you saw today that are focusing on different issues. And the summit itself is focusing on a wide variety of topics. So what we're also doing is that we're encouraging the delegates that are coming to come with key advocacy message. So you would not only see delegates coming out in sustainable cultural wear, but you will also see each delegate coming out with an advocacy message that is linked to one of the 4 key themes of the summit. And as I mentioned in my speech earlier, the reason behind the SIDS Youth Action Body is that we're here developing, there will be multiple national, regional, and interregional consultations. The official SIDS 4 conference would have their own 10-year commitment to action document, but we thought that it was imperative among us as children and youth to have our own 10-year commitment to action document, where we can monitor over a period of time the achievements of the SIDS Youth Action Summit, the projects that children and youth are bringing to Antigua, and really seeing the development and more inclusion of children and youth from SIDS in different upcoming processes. So currently the overall committees are discussing with the organizers of the Summit of 4 that is taking place in New York in September. We just had a meeting with the COP presidency as well to see how the outcomes of the Children and Youth Action Summit can continuously be integrated in upcoming forums. So that's the idea behind the SIDS Youth Action Body, to actually be like the policemen and policewomen for all these actions and solutions that our leaders are implementing, but also ourselves. So thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much, Ms. Lash.
Thank you so much. And can you just tell us your name? We didn't get your name.
Apologies. My name is Jenny Herbert.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
I'm with the Barbados National Youth Parliament.
Lovely. And just to note, we are also joined online by the First Secretary at the Antigua and Barbuda Permanent Mission to the United Nations in New York, who is also available to respond to any questions that you may have.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm John Delaney, part of the Barbados Youth Parliament. Before I ask my question, again, congratulations on the successful launch of the summit, and I look forward to all that comes out of it. One of the groups that I think about, especially when I see the UNICEF motto for every child, is thinking then about the parents. Yes, children may still have access to a launch like this and to see certain clips and hear the messages, but a lot of them may not understand it. The parents, however, definitely will. And the parents, I think, will be that key link between what you are trying to do and what happens during the summit and actually impacting lives of the children, especially those you think of persons that may have just had a newborn child. You talk about a 10-year action plan. In 10 years, that child will be well into the education system, well into the life of our nations. What can you say to a parent to really urge them on to continue to support this, not only now, but for the next 10 years to continue to champion it, for the next 10 years they stay up to date, they stay connected, and really watch as our nations progress into a space where their newborn child can look forward to a world where not just our small islands have big dreams, but that they themselves can have big dreams and don't have to go overseas to have them realized, but right here in our nations, they can see that.
That's a really great question, and thank you so much for raising that. Absolutely, parents are absolutely critical. I wouldn't underestimate the children, though, because I think children very much know what's going on, are very much well understanding the reality of their situation. So maybe not as a baby, but as they gradually grow older, they will understand almost equally as their parents. When children grow up, of course, we want to make sure that they have the best start in life. They want to make sure that they grow up protected, well-developed, and have opportunities like every other child in that society. So education, as we just spoke about, is absolutely critical, even from the early years onward, from the early ages onward. But we want to do more, because I think education, I think many of you here in the room and online will probably know you are here because you are already engaged. And we need to expand that pool of young people, children and youth that are engaged, that feel connected. Education is key to be able to start doing that, but I think we also need to look beyond education, and we need to start engaging children and young people, not just in these global summits, but also in structural manners in our day-to-day lives. And I know here in Barbados, we last year launched the National Students Association, the Students' Council. And I think that kind of work in every part of our life, in schools, children have something to say, pupils have something to contribute to how their school evolves, develops, what they teach, how they teach, etc. But that's in their community, in their youth clubs, in their scouts, in any other part of their life. We need to look for opportunities as early as possible for listening to children, for engaging with them, for acting on some of their thoughts and their views. And then maybe as a very young child linked to maybe the menu that is being served in the school canteen, to, I don't know, when you become like going to secondary school, to actually be involved in what is being taught in school and how it's being taught in school. And that applies the same for societies. We have the youth parliament here, you're a member of the youth parliament. I think we need to look much more for that kind of opportunities, progressively engage children and empower them to engage. And again, empowerment goes back to school, but not only. I think we need to organize activities that allow children to build the competency to speak up, to build the competency to enter into debates. And I know some of you here were in the UN, Model UN debates, but opportunities like that. And I think we need to really make sure that we don't wait until somebody turns 18 and suddenly you're allowed to vote and suddenly you're allowed to know, or shouldn't be knowing everything about every issue. That should not happen from age 18. That should happen from a much younger age. Yeah? The world is not developed in such a way. Yes, of course, children need to be protected, absolutely. But protection doesn't mean sheltering them from engaging and sheltering them from the issues that we are collectively facing as a global community.
Thank you very much, Ashley and Peter, for those very thoughtful responses. We have a question from online, from Alyssa White, who asks, in terms of participation, will there be a platform for youth who are not able to attend the summit in person to contribute to the conversations and submit ideas that can be utilized?
Asha, do you want to take that question?
I think so. All right, so in the meantime, I think perhaps, Ashley, you can respond.
So, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question essentially asks whether there'll be an opportunity for persons who are not at the summit in person to contribute to the outcomes virtually.
Yeah, so there's two ways in which persons that are not coming to Antigua and Barbuda can participate to the overall outcomes of the Children and Youth Action Summit. One, through the national, regional, and interregional discussions. And the reason why the consultations are in place is because we know that we aren't going to get a big significant of children and youth actually present in Antigua and Barbuda. So we're encouraging everyone to attend their national, regional, and interregional consultations, but you're probably asking how. And that information is going to be released across our social media in the next couple of days at SIDS Youth Action Summit, or SIDS Youth Action rather. And for the main conference itself, persons can tune in online to the opening ceremony and closing ceremony. And we're also discussing different approaches that more youth from across the Pacific, the Caribbean, and ACE region can actually be engaged in the summit as it is occurring. So I don't know if Asha, I saw your face comes up on screen, if you has anything to add.
We don't hear you.
So I guess I will emphasize all the information relating to how youth and children across small island developing states will be placed on our website and also our social media platforms. And soon from this week as well, we will be releasing a call for self-funded participation and non-self-funded participation as well, if children and youth from across SIDS are really interested in being in Antigua during May 24th to the 26th. Asha, you can try again.
That's no problem. In the meantime, I'll invite a question from the young lady here at the front.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chelsea Jordan from Let's Unpack It. Like those who have gone before me, I just want to begin by congratulating everyone involved on this. I think this is very momentous, especially allowing children and youth to have that kind of space. You know, sometimes we're included, but you know, just a little box. Something that I have to ask though, when we think of SIDS, when we think of children and youth, climate change, something that comes to mind is mental health. And mental health is really integrated, is very connected. We know that resilience to natural disasters and all these issues that we face as small and developing states really affects the mental health of children and youth. So I was just wondering, or my question really is, has there been thought or provisions for including mental health in some of these discussions, especially when it comes to education? A big part of mental health is education on said part. So I was just really wondering if that was included, because I think around these conversations, it's always good to talk about what you can see, what you can do in the now. But if we really want to consider a child, a young person in 10 years, I think we really have to include their mental health literacy, and you know, all things surrounding that. So that's my question. Yeah.
Thanks, Chelsea. So one of the key focus areas as well under the 4 overarching topics of the Children and Youth Action Summit is healthcare resilience. We do intend to highlight different mental health issues, especially the need for more psychosocial support across small island developing states. But even in the key topics like resilient recovery, we know that we need more support, and especially the stigma attached to mental health as well. How we can continue to empower the minds of children and young people to continuously implement more resilient systems across small island developing states. So although you won't see mental health as one of the key focus areas, it is embedded into the different thematic areas, because we also have one on secure future as well. And mental health does play a role in securing the future of children and young people. There's also another overarching topic of participation of children and youth in governance as well. And we know that the mental health outcomes, even I remember reading an article the other day that stated that the educational system as it is also helps perpetuate the mental health challenges that many young people are facing. So how children and youth can be more meaningfully included into governance as well. That's why we need more stakeholders, and I would say emphasize on the call for self-funded participants and non-funded participants when it goes out to ensure that we're reaching different overarching topics and themes that aren't at the heart of the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit.
Okay, thank you really much. Thank you very much from that, because I know sometimes it's kind of swept under in a big chunk of something. So really, thank you for emphasizing that.
And thank you very, very much for your question, Chelsea. Chelsea's from Let's Unpack It, which is a youth-led advocacy organization that focuses on mental health. And we really thank you for continuing to always place the mental health of young people at the forefront. Yes, we'll take another question.
Hi, good afternoon. Kyla Nurse. Before I ask my question, of course, I'd like to congratulate all the work that you're doing on behalf of the youth, especially with the summit. My question is quite simple, truthfully. It's looking at what outreach programs or forums that you may have before the summit, if anything, or during the summit, that can really reach out to those youth who are in high-risk areas or like poverty-stricken areas, because oftentimes we really only see youth from those who are associated with foundations or maybe in schools who have connections. So I'm just looking at what outreach programs and how you plan to engage those who are in high-risk areas.
Maybe I'll start off on that one. Thank you so much for that question. And of course, leaving nobody behind is absolutely always the core area of our work, and outreach is critical. And this is not, of course, we're not just planning. I think this work has already started last year in terms of the consultations. A lot of the work, the pre-work, the information that went into the document I flashed earlier, and I can share that later, is already coming out of many consultations that have taken place in many parts of the world, and we're continuing to do this until the very last moment before the summit. But we're moving slowly from identifying issues and challenges, we're moving slowly towards actions and coming up with actions. And for us here, I know we are in touch, for instance, from this office with all our counterpart offices across the globe, up to the smallest islands in the Pacific, in order to be able to bring youth voices to Antigua and Barbuda from the small island developing states, no matter where they are, and especially from children that are not as privileged that they have access to necessarily national parliaments or student councils or schools sometimes. So this is our challenge. This is our day-to-day challenge as UNICEF in everything we do, and certainly also in this particular conference.
And to add to, like, as a young person myself, coming from a marginalized community, it is something that I'm totally advocating for, the inclusion of youth and children from different backgrounds, young people living with disabilities, youth and children from different stigmatized and marginalized communities as well. So we're really trying to reach them through the consultations, like Peter mentioned, because it's imperative if we're developing a 10-year commitment to action document, it is inclusive and it includes the voices of youth and children from all varying different types of backgrounds and ethnicities. So we're really trying to make the summit as inclusive as we could, gathering the perspective of youth and children from all varying different types of backgrounds.
Thank you. And before we take the next question in the room, I just have another question from our online audience, and it's specifically for Ashley. Are you satisfied, or how hopeful are you that the needs of children and youth in meeting the diverse challenges of an uncertain future will be fully embraced and reflected in the final outcome of SIDS 4?
Oh gosh, who's that person that asked that question? And no, I'm not satisfied as a child, well, a youth myself as it relates to the reflections of children and youth in the final outcome document of the SIDS 4 conference. But what I think too, as a young person myself, I don't believe that we should depend too much on the outcome document of SIDS 4. My partners might tell me that, Ashley, you're wrong. But although that is a central document, which, yes, it determines the future of small island developing states, most of the outcomes in order to shape our future, in my opinion, will come out after the SIDS 4 conference. So like the SIDS Children and Youth Action Body that I mentioned that would monitor the different outcomes, there would be different organizations and stuff who would be working coherently at implementing the different outcomes within their respective communities. So I believe although we are not seeing the heart of children and youth being integrated into the outcome document of SIDS 4, what we call the zero draft, what I believe is that we would see the heart of integration of children and youth after the actual SIDS conference. But I think that is something that UNICEF, I know Peter has been advocating for, in seeing more children and youth embedded into the actual outcome document. But that is why we also have the commitment to action document as us as children and youth, so that we can deliver that to the leaders and persons who will be attending the official Children and Youth Action Summit. So a lot more needs to be done. As my colleague said, not only checking the box and tokenism when it comes to children and youth from across it, but seeing more meaningful integration. And hopefully within the next 10 years of the official SIDS 4 progress, we would see the inclusion of children and youth at the start of the discussions and the negotiations within the room. I often say that, we as stakeholders have like delegations, but I think within the initial stages, a young person must be appointed on national delegations when the conversations within the room are starting as to how it would determine our future. So definitely a lot more needs to be done. I think that is why we formed the SIDS Children and Youth Action Summit.
Yeah, Peter.
Ashley is right. I don't 100% agree, but I do agree with everything she said. But it's not necessarily an either or. I think it is both the actions and the mobilization of young people, which is absolutely critical, as Ashley just very well outlined, and that's maybe more impactful in the future. I agree also on that. But I wouldn't be, a UN official if I said like whatever being put on paper is equally important, and we should not forget about that. I think ultimately what goes into the outcome document, and that's also collectively our responsibility to make sure it's there. Because we know, for example, if we look at the 28 years of COP negotiations, climate action negotiations, there is in any of the outcome documents, less than 2.4% of the funding is ultimately going to children or to investments in children. The word children is, for instance, hardly mentioned in these COP negotiations or hardly reflected in documents. So I do think we need to work on both those sides. In the end of the day, the work that we're doing on the Action Summit, the mobilization of young people going forward, the group that is being set up to kind of take the actions forward during the next agenda is key. But I would certainly, from my side, also work and do whatever we can collectively to see that it's reflected in the relevant documentation coming out of the conference.
I guess actually.
So it's neither either, it's both.
Thank you. And all right. So, and just to be clear, in response to your question, that question was from Andy Libbard, who I believe is a journalist from Antigua and Barbuda. So thank you for your question. And we reopen the floor for more questions.
Hi, my name is Ashley. So my question is basically for non-nationals, right? Persons that come from a different country to seek better education somewhere else. So you guys say that you guys say that the aim or the goal, or let me see, the word I was looking for is the The hidden message in the story is, I can't remember the word. Oh, the theme. Hidden message story is the theme. Small islands, big dreams. So what about small man, big dreams? As in, you migrate here. Yes, we're allowed to go to school under student visa, but yet still, our fees are much higher. If you want to go to poly, you have to pay $1,500 extra with fees to attend poly, but yet still we're not allowed to work while going to school. Now, if we're already less fortunate, fine. Our parents have other kids to send to school. Why is it that student visa would not allow us to work? Because you got to pay your school fees, then your parents still got to find money to send you to school. And then sometimes you may got to work on the books, and then we all know how that may go. So my question is, what are you guys putting in place so that non-nationals can also have a good education, but do not run literally broke trying to get this education because they are not allowed to work while going to school or having the fair benefits of nationals within the same island?
Thank you for your question. And I believe the person perhaps best placed to respond, but not perfectly
All right,
placed to respond,
one
is
more
Peter.
thing to add, right, to make it a less easier. So for instance, if I want to go UE over here, I have to pay $36,000 Bajan dollars a year. But if I go to Trinidad, I only have to pay, in every semester, there's 5 courses, and it's 2,000 TT dollars, which is $294 US. So why would I have to pay 36,000 here? But Trinidad, it's a bit cheaper, and I only have to pay 250 US by $2,500 US a year. So what's in the negotiation when you guys negotiate? I'm a bit nervous. What is being put in place so that even though we want the education, we can be allowed to work? Like student visa, you can still be allowed to work so you can help yourself and not run broke trying to get education.
It's a very good question. It's not something that necessarily we have directly kept into mind when we are working on the SIDS, the global conference, and the consultations. It's definitely an issue, I think, that can be raised, the issue of mobility across CARICOM, across different regions. I imagine that in other regions of the SIDS community, there may be other or similar or other such situations. I find it really hard to respond on behalf as UNICEF to this kind of domestic, regional kind of integration question. I do see the importance of stimulating integration across regions, across a region like CARICOM, across other regions. I think it's important that we bring people together, connect, and facilitate that process, which may be including looking at student fees as well, in terms of making them more accessible across the Caribbean, across the CARICOM region. You know, anything that can help bring small island developing states out of like the small part, but make them bigger or bigger economies, more connected mobility, is something I think that is worthwhile pursuing as a region. But that's about what I can say about this particular topic. I don't know whether I don't know whether Asha can connect, but from an Antigua perspective, and the government perspective has something to add to that, but I don't know whether she is connected still.
One other thing, right? So, not to make it sound that bad, the reason why we're not, we have to pay so much is because Guyana is not a part of the University West Indies establishment. We do not pay the fee, but every other Caribbean country pays the fee. But what I was trying to ask is, when you're negotiating, can you negotiate that Guyana can join it so we can get a better or a better opportunity at university, that non-nationals or any other person that's getting a hard time to get to attend university here? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon all. My name is Trinity. I'm very excited for the Children and Youth Action Summit because of the main fact, as a national youth parliamentarian, we're always trying to advocate for what we as young people believe that we would like to see. And I just want to ask, what are the steps you're all going to be taking to get different global and local leaders and also government involved when it comes to providing something like action, what we would like to see as ourselves? Because like, we can't do everything as youth by ourselves without having a government who makes these decisions, who goes in parliament, who makes the necessary bills. So like, what are the measures being taken to ensure that young people's voices are actually heard, so they're not speaking, and improvements are being made?
Yeah. So is our colleague from the Antigua mission still online?
It doesn't look like
We are hearing you loud and clear.
can hear me.
Now we hear you.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And very happy to be here on behalf of Antigua and Barbuda. I was actually having a little bit of technical difficulties and I could not quite hear the question from the last young lady. If someone could briefly summarize her question, I'll be happy to address.
Hi, my question was on the fact that as young people, we all have voices and we all have opinions. As a youth parliamentarian, we advocate for what we believe that our young people would like to see. We also advocate on our behalf, but we can also advocate, say, and speak about these discussions, but it's up to us to ensure that we have the support of our local and global leaders and also our government. So what is the actions being taken by the organization to ensure that the governments get involved and different small developing states also to get involved when it comes to their young people taking action?
Thank you, great question. And this is one of the main reasons why we're having the Children and Youth Action Summit. At the end of the actual SIDS 4, we'll have a presentation from the Youth Summit. And this is an opportunity for a presentation to be delivered from representatives of the summit directly to the leaders at SIDS 4. So this will be on the final day. This is a very unique opportunity, quite innovative for SIDS 4 that will have this space to make a presentation. So young people will be able to directly feed in their priorities. And it's been very enriching hearing focus on education, focus on access to education, as the last speaker raised, focus on mental health. And these are specifically the reasons why we need to hear youth voices, to pull out from these umbrella themes that SIDS4 is discussing, to pull out those areas that are of unique interest to SIDS within the Caribbean region, the Pacific region, and the Atlantic region. So we will essentially give the leaders, this is what SIDS, youth from SIDS want. This is how we're going to work together. This is how we can help, and this is how we want our leaders to represent us. And these are the areas that we want specific action. And so this is a start at SIDS 4, and we're hoping to carry on these actions, implement projects, implement relationships between young people and their governments for the next 10 years. We're also very, very excited that there will be youth from all the SIDS regions. So I imagine that youth from the Pacific and youth from the Caribbean can find areas of joint interest, and they can form groups, whether they be virtual or they can find funding through agencies that will be there to continue the advocacy, continue the work, and maybe even implement some of the solutions that they'll be discussing. So these are some of the ways that youth can pour into the 10-year framework for their governments, and which will all be present, all SIDS governments, and actually all governments at the UN will be present at SIDS 4. So youth voices will be heard.
Thank you so much. And we only have time for one final question. You have the floor.
Hi, my name is Nanji Bradshaw, Youth Parliament. But my question, I'm going to run it back to something that actually you've said before, but you named a lot of things that are happening. You named a lot of problems that we have, and you said that you're activists. So, from your journey, as we all know, you've had a well-rigid journey in activism. What would you say is our most precedent issue right now? And the reason why I asked this is going back to Mr. Sorry, but you said that a lot of our youth know about what's going on. No, but really and truly, from what I've experienced, not a lot of us know. Not a lot of us actually went in or took the time to research or are interested in that field. So this kind of relates back to that question, along with how can you what opportunities are there for more youth to intervene, to participate in these things, to go overseas and be in these summits?
Thank you for your question. So I believe that there must be a multi-sectorial approach involving persons from private sector, the government, and civil society organizations working together as one to ensure that more opportunities are being granted to young people from all varying different types of backgrounds. And for me, there's so many different pressing issues in which we're seeing throughout the SIDS 4 agenda. One of the most critical issues for a lot of small island developing states is that of environmental prosperity. We're seeing that many small island developing states, the sea levels are rising. There's a need for more coastal protection. We're seeing extreme weather events. And that's why when we're looking at the economies of small island developing states, we're seeing that so many countries are advocating for the need for more climate finance, more adaptation, efforts being undertaken in our countries. So we heard Chelsea mention mental health. We know that across the Caribbean region, 1 in every 3 children are either living with a form of obesity or being overweight. Non-communicable diseases is a major plight that is faced in our small island developing states as well. So there's so many different issues that are pressing small island nations. And that is why we need that multi-sectorial approach really happening to ensure that in these rooms and in these spaces that we are highlighting issues that are affecting us at all different types of levels. So one of the key issues that across the SIDS 4 agenda that I personally would be advocating for is that of environmental prosperity.
Thank you so much. All right, and I just want to say a special thank you to Ashley and Peter, and to all of you who would have posed your questions. We're going to take one more?
No, Asha.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes. Asha, you had a response to the question as well?
No, I think Ashley answered quite comprehensively. I think what would be interesting is that there may not be one pressing issue. There may be a bucket of issues. I know that while that may not be something on many young people's ideas, but I think a lot of us understand that our government may not have a lot of money, just in general. So we understand how that impacts education, health, availability of jobs for our youth. So I think that's one issue that will sort of raise to the fore as something that's quite important to young people, in addition to environment. I also think digitalization and access to the internet, where in 10 years from now, how many of us will be working remotely? So access to reliable, safe internet, safety on the internet also is another area that I think may raise. But I can't sit here and predict. We want to hear from the youth, but I think that there may be a few, at least 3 or 4 priority issues that will come from young people in the various areas. So I'm very excited to hear what those are.
for joining us, Ms. Challenger. And thank you again to Ashley and to Peter, and to all of you who would have posed your various questions this afternoon. Before we go, I just want to invite a young man from the Harrison College School here in Barbados, Atiba, to deliver a poem. Welcome, Atiba.
Good afternoon. My name is Atiba Seeley Thompson. The performance I'm going to do for you is called Heal the World. It is a poem that I wrote a while ago, and the theme is about preserving the environment, and it is something that I think as a performer and as a youth, it is important that we do use art and other things to really carry the message to fellow youths, because I think that is the person that we're most likely going to listen to, because youths like to hear from other youths, and we would relate to each other and understand each other better than I'm just listening to some guy from whoever doing whatever. I'm not going to relate to that. So I think that's what I do, and that's my mission, to really get this both to the youth and my fellow people and people who are in power or are actually making actions and making things happen for the environment and for people and the community. So yeah. Heal the world. Make it a better place. For you, for me, and the entire human race. These were the wise words of Michael Jackson. Well, they were more than just words. They were a call to action, to reduce the things that were bringing the world dissatisfaction, carbon emissions, littering, but there seems to be a delayed action. So while you sit idly and watch your world break down like factions, won't that lead to a reduction in your own satisfaction? To put it in more simpler words, for those of you whose heads I've stirred, the world around you is burning, and it's time for you to show concern. So while your world crumbles, and you just sit there, idly, I think it's time you get up and start moving forward. Because our selfish acts destroy natural habitats. We killed the flora and the fauna and consumed them for what? To get fat! This kind of behavior is just unfair, and that's a fact. So believe me when I tell you, it's time to act. Now, you may ask me, how do we stop this catastrophe? Well, the answer is much simpler than you think, you see. You could simply stop wasting water, stop littering, go to beach cleanup so the garbage won't flow into the sea. Plant yourself a tree. There are 1,000,001 ways to make the world a better place. But remember, you're doing it for you, for me, and the entire human race. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Atiba. And just to say, Atiba has made a very, very special effort to be here today. And he had prior commitments, and we just want to thank him again for sharing his art with us. Finally, I want to invite Ms. Tishana Panchu, a steering committee member from the Ashley Lashley Foundation, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. Pleasant good afternoon again to everyone. And I would first like to say a heartfelt thank you to the host country of Antigua and Barbuda, especially the Honorable Gaston Brown, the Prime Minister, and Claxton Durbury for their time, and Miss Asha Challenger. I would also like to thank UNICEF Eastern Caribbean, led by Mr. Peter Bold, and the UNICEF country offices across the three SIDS regions who have been assisting us with the coordination. The Ashley Lashley Foundation, of course, for all of their dedication and support in making the summit possible. We would also like to thank other partners who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes, such as the Caribbean Development Bank, UNESCO, the Global Environment Facility, U Report Global, the UNFPA, and major group of children and youth for leading on the consultations. Additionally, we would also like to thank the team at Tarsier Strategy for your efforts on the development of the website. We would like to thank you for the media coverage of this important activity today, along with the attendees of today's launch. And last but most certainly not least, a thank you to everyone who have made their contributions in the development of the summit. The children, our youth, are the leaders of tomorrow, so we must make the investments in them today. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much to you as well, Tashana. With that said, I want to bring this afternoon's launch to a close. And again, to say thank you to all of you for joining us here at UN House Barbados, and to all those who would have been joining us, whether on YouTube, on Zoom. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah. I also want to invite you to enjoy some light refreshments on the outside.